Good morning, everybody. The Democratic candidate in Wisconsin's 75th Assembly District, Jane Kleiss, is our very special guest today, Friday, September 27th, 2024. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you are watching DrydenWire Live. Hey, a quick special shout out and a thank you to some of our recent guests on DrydenWire Live, including Senator Romaine Quinn, Representative Chance Green, Republican candidate in the 75th Assembly District race, Duke Tucker, Democratic candidate in the 74th Assembly District race, Jeannie Bruce, Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Congressman Tom Tiffany, and President of Business Operations for the Milwaukee Brewers, Rick Schlesinger, just to name a few. You can watch a recording of those shows and all of our previous shows right here on our Facebook page under our video tab, or go to our website at DrydenWire.com. It's probably easiest, though. We store all of our recorded videos on our YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/DrydenWire. With that said, we welcome today's guest, first time on the show, Democratic candidate in Wisconsin's 75th Assembly District race, Jane Kleiss. Jane, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing pretty well.
Just pretty well? Not spectacular?
Yeah. No, I'd be
No.
spectacular if the back to school germs hadn't hit this week.
Ah.
But, we're getting through it.
Yeah, that is a thing, right? Back to school thing. All of a sudden, kids around a whole bunch of other kids, and then, it's like the first month of school. There's a lot of
Yep.
sickness.
Yeah, we were good this year. We didn't go down until this week, so it's been pretty good.
Oh, well, welcome to the show. Obviously, first time that you're on. It's always my favorite time to have a guest on. Is the first time because I get to learn about them at the same time other people do, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who do know you. So we will get into kind of towards the last half of the show some of the issues or priorities or issues that you see are facing the 75th Assembly District or Wisconsin, or some priorities that you have when elected, if elected. I'm not really sure. I think it's like, I don't want to jinx it and say if, but in the event, how about that?
I like to think when.
Okay,
But,
when you're
it
elected.
is an uphill battle in our district, and
Yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Sure. Well, we can get to that, but first, let's get to know you. So tell us about you. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
Well, I started my wonderful journey of life in East Tennessee. So I spent about a third of my life in East Tennessee and a third in bouncing around Virginia. And
Virginia,
then we
like
moved
close
here.
to Washington, D.C., like on that side of it?
I went all over. I was in the Shenandoah Valley and then a brief stint on the coast. Figured out pretty quick that that was not where I
Nothing.
wanted to be. And then about 10 years outside of DC in Northern Virginia. And that
Oh,
was a really nice place to live until I moved closer to the city to get to work.
okay, so how did you get to Virginia? And about what time in your life were you in Virginia?
I went to college there.
Oh, sure.
So it was, I spent about 15 years in Tennessee, and that was right on the border. I grew up in Bristol. So that
Okay.
was the state line for Tennessee, Virginia runs right down the main street there. And so it was one of those border towns. It feels very familiar to me to live right on the border with Minnesota here because it's kind of the same setup I grew up with. Um,
And
it's always,
why'd you decide college in Virginia? You don't have colleges in Tennessee?
oh, there are plenty of colleges in Tennessee, but only a few in the country that would have fit me at the time. I went to college early. So I had a program that I went to through Mary Baldwin College at the time. They're a university now.
And then
And
what'd you go to college for?
it was a combo degree between theater and business because I really loved the theater. This is where I kind of found a community.
Hmm.
But I'm a practical woman, and even as a teenager, I realized, hey, I like to eat, so I need
Yeah.
some other education around this, and I found a way to combine the two interests and did business, theater, and then I had a history minor. So
So what did you
basically, I'm
want
a
to?
great big nerd.
But I love it. Hey, man, nerds and geeks run the world. They just do.
They do.
So what did you want to be when you were all grown up? Right? Like I went to this
I
so I
had
can get a
no
degree, and then I
idea.
could do this.
Yeah, I had no idea.
That's
So
normal.
kind of, yeah, it's when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily know exactly what you want to do. And I tried on a bunch of different industries and then realized that, I really hate working in an office. So it was after we got established here, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore and I wanted to go work with food. But
Food in what way? So what did you end up doing with food?
no, I went and I was the manager at Cafe Ren for about 3 years before my son was born. And then I came back. I had started there with the intention of learning everything I could from Stephanie because she's amazing and has a very successful business in a hard industry. And I was going to open my own place. And then when we had our son, I decided that was not going to be a good life work balance for me because running a
Oh,
restaurant is incredibly time intensive.
yeah.
So I kind of went back to the drawing board, ended up making the soup at Cafe Ren ever since because I love that place. It's my happy spot in the world to be in that windowless basement kitchen. And I kind of worked through my goals of feeding people tasty, healthy food and figured out that I could make myself a business out of being a personal chef in the area.
What
So I kind
area?
of just,
Virginia?
no, here
Oh, so how did you get then
in
here?
Northwestern.
So,
Oh, yeah, we kind of skipped over that, didn't we?
yeah. So you were in
So,
Virginia. You decided that cafe. What was it called? De la Ren.
oh, no, that's here.
Oh,
Cafe
that's
Ren
here.
was here. Yeah, that was 13 years ago.
Okay,
So
so
I've
how
been
did you go
here
from
in
Virginia
Wisconsin
to
for
where you are now? I think
17
you're in
years.
Polk County, right?
We live out in the Barrens, town of Sterling.
Okay.
Um, we came here. My now husband um, was being flown out here a couple of times a year to do some contract work for his uncle, and he had a company in Grantsburg. They were growing, needed IT infrastructure, and he finally was just like, "Hey, do you guys want to move here?" And at the
You,
time, I was living in the DC suburbs in Virginia, and my now husband was in Martinsburg, West Virginia. So that's an hour and a half with no traffic. And we'd been together for a few years, been trying to figure out where we were going to set up camp to where we could actually be in the same place. And we decided that the best way to do that was to pick up and move 1,200 miles away
no. Well,
and
did
get
he
out of
know
that
anything
area.
about the area? And did you? I'm like, at this point, do you know anything about Grantsburg? Anything about rural Northwest Wisconsin?
He had been here a few times, and I came up with him for a weekend in the middle of January that year. So
Yeesh,
that
that's a
was
bad time to visit.
2007.
Uh,
Oh, it's the perfect time to
I mean,
visit.
perfect time to visit.
You got to see it at, the coldest. And that was actually a mild winter. So they had just gotten a tiny little bit of snow. It was magical to us. Like the lack of so many humans was a real
Yeah,
big
that
selling
is
point
nice. Yeah,
for me.
yeah. Especially then.
And
Wait, so did you have your son when you decided to move, or not yet?
we moved here 17 years ago, got married in our field the following summer,
uh
and then it was another several years before we
Okay,
had
okay,
Jack.
right, right, okay. So you made the trip here, and
hmm
is it one of those 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in, you and your husband are going, we made a terrible mistake. Like this place,
No, nope, we have really enjoyed being up here. The natural attractions around here, the rivers, it's everything that we'd wanted. And we really, really love being rural. We live in this magical vortex that's 20 minutes from everywhere we need to be. So we're 20 minutes from Grantsburg, 20 minutes from Luck, 20 minutes from St. Croix, and we have this circle of area where we are. I've noticed up here, you end up having your area where you normally are, and you don't really venture out of it. So we don't
no,
get south of 8 very often.
right, yeah.
And we don't get much north of, say, Danbury very often unless we're getting out for vacation.
Well, it's also true though, and you could probably attest to this. You lived in the suburb and more in the big city area. Like even I lived in north side of Minneapolis and in Minnesota, the Twin Cities area, for a number of years in my 20s. Interestingly,
Hmm.
I would go to the same Walmart, the same Target, the same gas station, the same grocery store, and they're all just like within the closest things to where I was renting.
Hmm.
And I also never really ventured out except to, for work stuff, and occasionally we'll go somewhere for just to see something cultural wise, but mostly we just kind of hung around our area.
Yeah. Yeah. So mostly you end up with your neighborhood that you spend most of your time in.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we've done up here. And it's been so wonderful. When we bought our house, we ended up with a bonus cat that had six kittens on our front porch that summer.
What?
And yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, hey, we just had a cat show up. And we already moved here with, I had two cats, my husband had two cats. So it was a little madness for a while. And then, you buy a house in the country and you just have animals
Get
show
cats,
up.
I guess. Yeah.
That's a thing
It's
that
it's it
happens.
is a thing. I remember growing up because I grew up outside in Shell Lake, about 4 miles out. So we're out in the real, and yeah, there's just animals that, oh, there's a dog and there's cats that are coming, and okay. Or do you have
Where
a
are they coming
home,
from?
or are
I
you
don't know.
like, I don't know? Do you feed it? Do you not? That's interesting. So I get it now. So then you were working at that restaurant, and that's
Hmm.
where is that located?
It's in luck.
In Luck. So you were working there.
Hmm.
Your husband is
I
doing
work.
his thing, and then you
Hmm.
decided to do something else.
I decided to start my own personal chef service. And then once my son started school, because he was born here, like I had him in Amory. And so he's never lived anywhere else. He loves it here. And I ended up going back, got daycare a couple of days a week. And then once he was able to start school in 4K, then that was when I could launch my business. And
And
it was really cool to just kind of carve out this niche in our community and be able to help people that couldn't get out, couldn't prep their meals, or just didn't want to anymore.
yeah, and that's a thing, and maybe I'm sure it's a thing in bigger cities too, but especially in rural areas like ours, people. It's interesting looking around and seeing how someone just had this idea and looked and
Hmm.
said either nobody else is doing it, or maybe they're doing it but not very well, and I think I could do it, and they just start a business. Like the overwhelming
Yeah.
majority of businesses in rural North Wisconsin are small businesses, and I don't mean under 100 employees, small businesses, which is technically a small business. I mean less than 10 or 5. That is
A handful of people or just
right.
you yourself
Yeah, and they
doing
can make
it.
a living off of it. Like that's the
Hmm.
crazy part. This is like it breeds entrepreneurs in rural North Wisconsin. It just does because you have to find
It's
something to
one of
do.
the Yeah, it's one of those beautiful things about our area that you can really make it be
That's
whatever
right.
you want it to be.
That's right.
And I've
So
loved all those opportunities.
what's the name of the business, and are you still doing it?
I pulled back a couple of years ago after my dad died so I could deal with all of his stuff.
Sorry
But
for your
it's Jane's
loss.
just-in-time meals. Yep, it's a thing. We've kind of been through it this past couple of years, between me losing my dad, my mother-in-law died, and then it kind of makes you reevaluate what you're doing with your life and how you're spending your time because we have a limited amount of it. And our lives are what we can make of them. And you have this brief window in the history of the world to make your impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really kind
Mm-hmm.
of motivated me to do a little more with my time now that my son's getting older. It's kind of leading into running for office here is that, why not? Why not do these things when you have a chance? Because sooner or later, we all age. That's just the way it works. And you have to be able to make your mark.
So how did you end up deciding? Is this something that somebody had to talk you into in terms of deciding to run for office? Was it something that specifically happened? Was it a quick decision? Was it over time? What did your husband think?
It was very impulsive in a way. I was driving my son to school last April, and we were starting to see signs going up. And it was a matter of, okay, I'm looking at the candidate signs that I'm seeing, looking at who's thinking of running this year, and I realized we didn't have a Democratic candidate running.
Mm.
And I started asking around. I was like, who do we have that's going to run? Figuring somebody was going to do it. And it was crickets. No one was going to. Nobody had been able to be recruited by the party. And I was like, well, screw it. I'll do it. Like, why not me? I
Mm.
was telling my son, okay, well, this is the state assembly. This is what they do. And kind of going through it, I was like, I could do those things. I have this real knack for problem solving. I don't tend to look at problems the same way everybody else does. I'll kind of turn things different angles and look at it in a fresh way. And I've found that throughout my life, I've been able to take seemingly disparate positions and kind of drill down on them and figure out what that root cause of the disconnect is. And when you can address that, then you can really start building strong solutions for whatever issue it is you're trying to solve, right?
Mm.
And when that hit me, I was like, well, why not me? I came home and I was like, hey, darling, what would you think if I did this?
And he said,
And he was all in this year. It's been one of those time frames for our own personal life where we're kind of reassessing things and um, changing some things about our lives before we go into this final chapter of our professional lives. We've
mm-hmm.
got about 20 years before retirement,
Right.
and kind of reevaluating our priorities. And he was all for it this year.
So, every time
And
my wife comes home and says, hey, honey, what do you think about, I stop, I'm like, stop, tell me how much it's going to cost me. That's all you need to, or actually say us, because, all of our money goes together, but still, oh, what's it going to cost? So wait a minute, let me back up. So April was the primary. Now, you didn't have a primary opponent.
April was when we were filing, or starting the filing process.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
were
I'm
in
sorry.
the
Yes.
swing of
I'm
collecting
thinking.
signatures then.
Yeah. Apologies. I was thinking like county board things and mayors and all that.
Yeah, it was
So
our county elections.
right. So in April, you noticed this and you decided to do it. The election was in August, and obviously you didn't have a primary opponent. So therefore, you
No.
don't have to do any signs. Well, I don't know if you've done signs or not, or any kind of marketing or
I
advertising.
started getting signs up slowly over the summer, but they've really kind of hit this past month,
Sure.
going up around the area. And now I'm starting my advertising and
Sure.
such.
And
That
lots of
plan's
door
coming real
knocking,
soon.
I'm sure.
Lots of door knocking. I'm up over 1,000 doors now that I've
Jeez.
knocked personally. And I found so many really great conversations at those doors, and not necessarily with people that agree with me on everything, but it's been really great to get out and talk to people. I found a lot of people that are really dissatisfied with the tone around issues. Like, people aren't talking about issues so much as hurling insults back and forth within their own families, even. And people are sick of that. They want to be able to just take a step back and have people in office that will actually work to solve problems.
Now, when
So
you say
that's
that tone and could you elaborate on that? Are you talking about the candidates doing that, or are you talking about what they see, like just community members who are, my neighbor has a Trump
community
sign, so therefore I don't
members,
like them, kind of a thing.
or the flip side, people getting their Biden signs shot up last
Right, exactly,
election
or whatever it
cycle.
is,
Right?
exactly.
It's disgusting that it
Yeah,
gets so ugly.
yeah.
Like, these are issues that are solvable, and in conversations at doors, a lot of times it's people feeling like they're living in totally separate realities. And I think that has a lot to do with the media sources people
Yeah.
follow. And they're finding themselves in these information silos. And it's really hard to break out of that, because you like to read things that make you feel good. And then you're not going to go searching for something that might show the other side of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent a lot of time in my personal life trying to just double check, like, when I'm reading something online, what's the slant of the organization that I'm reading it from,
Yeah.
and making sure that you get that information from a well-rounded source or from a few different sources to see where the truth actually lies.
Or
Because most of the time,
at the very least, just know, like, okay, I'm reading
hmm
this, and like, clearly there's a little slant, and a lot of times you could just tell by the headline, right? If this is a
yeah,
left leaning or a right leaning, or if they're kind of pulling you one, if, I don't want to get into all that, but no, at least if you know, then it's okay.
hmm
Now I'm going to read this to get the facts. I'm going to pull the facts out of this, but I'm not going to allow it to be subconscious. All of a sudden, now I'm hating one party or another because of just of the slant how it is. I think just being aware of it. I mean, it's perfectly fine. Everyone can have an opinion, but ideally, you would like to have an informed opinion. That would
exactly.
be a little nicer.
Yeah, and I found, it's been a struggle for some people to find news sources that aren't
Yeah.
in their usual line, and it's been really nice to be able to tell people, hey, one thing I've found refreshing this year is to watch um, campaign events on C-SPAN,
Mm.
because then you don't have talking heads telling you what to think. And if I hear about a rally in a certain town, I'll just Google the candidate C-SPAN in the town, and I'll get a direct link. You can watch it the whole way through and actually hear what they're talking about, not cherry pick little sound bites.
That's 100% right, because what people seem to either forget or maybe not realize, that maybe they're just ignorant on it, which is fine, that public opinion is driven by media's reaction to government.
hmm
So it's actually like the majority of our own, or I should say, public opinion is actually just based on media's. And of course, their response to politicians and politics and government and policies and everything that goes into that. So
And it
yeah,
gets
try
amplified on social media, and it's
right.
like
Yeah.
problems in our society are a lot more nuanced than a five
Yes.
second sound bite.
Yes.
And it takes really kind of understanding that there's different perspectives involved and different needs that need to be met by our legislation, and making sure that you can get that well-rounded approach to problem solving.
So when you knock on doors? So maybe when you went
hmm
into this, you thought, okay, here are like the biggest priorities, the biggest focuses that I want to have. Has any of those changed now that you've knocked on 1,000 doors and had hundreds of conversations and gone, I originally thought like these 3 to 5 things, but actually one of those isn't going to be in my top 3 or 5 anymore because actually I've heard from hundreds of people about this other thing that I didn't realize that's what everyone was on their lips. Were you surprised by anything in terms of I didn't realize this was such a priority to a lot of people that I've knocked on doors, or maybe the opposite, right? Maybe it's they've kind of turned you around on something else that uh, either added something to or taken away that no, I guess nobody really cares about the issue that I thought everybody cared about.
Not really, honestly. It's been
So you
really kind
nailed it
of,
first time.
and the things that I'm concerned about as a mom in our community are the
Mhm.
same things that a lot of other people are concerned about.
And what are those?
So, really big priorities are access to healthcare and mental health services in our rural communities, because we need to be able to access healthcare without driving a crazy long time. And that can be hard out here. Um, I know that we're one of 10 states that didn't expand Medicaid under the ACA. So if we can do that, then that'll help our hospital systems keep a better operating margin. That's been shown by data from the 40 other states that did expand Medicaid.
Mhm.
And it'll just help them stay financially healthier. And it's, again, a low margin area. There's a lot of things that go into making healthcare work, but being able to make sure that we've got obstetric services in areas, because we
What are
saw
those?
baby services,
Oh,
being
sure.
able to deliver your babies locally and not have to drive a crazy long time when you're in labor. We've seen neighboring districts with systems pulling back on that care or shutting down entirely. And um, it's just important that we can have these resources in our communities, because businesses aren't going to locate where their employees can't get health care, don't have child care. We're in a child care desert up here in a lot of places. And Polk County's been pretty good. We've got some really great programs attached to our schools in the area. Most of the school districts have a companion daycare program that's started up just in the last 10 years or so. I'm not sure exactly when they got going, but I was paying attention as I was having a small child and needing to get him in daycare for a couple of days a week. And then COVID happened, and like all bets are off with childcare anymore. All that's changed since I had to deal with it.
Hmm.
And I know we've got um, a lot of people working very hard to provide that early child care that our families depend on to be able to go and work and do what we need to do in our lives. And you've got people working hard for next to nothing. Like it's seriously underpaid in my opinion for the amount of labor that goes into it. And you've got systems, childcare businesses that have incredibly slim margins, and it's hard. So there's a lot of things we could do if we kind of take a step back and look at how do we make sure that these services are available in our rural communities so that people can um, work, so we can have full labor participation in our areas.
Are there any things that pop into my? You had mentioned the ACA in Wisconsin not
Hmm.
doing that. Is there anything else that you see or that you've kind of researched? And I'm not asking like, so what are you going to do? How are you going to get this done? Because that's very difficult to do with one person when you have
Yeah,
98 other peers. It's not like, well, you run your own
exactly.
business. It's not like I'm going to do this. It's, oh boy. And plus, you're just getting in and going, I don't know what I'm doing. I think one of the first things you do when you're elected in the assembly is we got to do a budget. You're like, dude, I just got here. I don't even know where the bathrooms are. And we have to pass a budget for 2 years. That's crazy. Right. So it's
Yeah.
silly to ask someone that has never been in the assembly. So what's exactly your plan and how are you going to do it? That's
Mhm.
very difficult to answer. And if you could answer it, let's face it, it just means that you know how to answer the question.
Exactly.
Doesn't actually
Because
mean right.
whatever plan you have going in is going to change as soon as you start talking
Probably
to the
right. So
98
that's
other people.
exactly right.
Uh,
So that's why it's important
it,
that we focus on what are your priorities, what are the things that you are
mhm.
passionate about. I prefer
So
those
healthcare,
better.
childcare,
Yep.
education, we gotta figure out how we're funding our schools in a different way.
Hmm.
'Cause that changed under the Scott Walker administration,
Yep.
and it's not working in our rural communities. We have some schools that are relying on bonding referendums just to make bills, just to keep the lights on, basic operating costs, not special projects. And then that's just shifting the burden onto property taxes if they can get it through. And it's causing some issues. And it's a
And a
pain
lot of
point for a lot of
referendums. I
people.
don't know about over in
Yeah.
Polk County, but there's a lot of referendums in our a lot. Okay, that's relative. More than we've usually seen. There's been a lot of
Hmm.
referendums.
A lot of referendums that are, and some of them have special projects that they're needing, school upkeep, whatnot, but some of them are just to cover operating costs. And those are the ones that I really want to take a look at how we're funding the schools, make sure that they've got the resources they need. I know there's been some proposals for, requiring schools to teach personal finance and civics and cursive, and all of these things are great, but we need to make sure that the schools have the resources that they need to be able to do that effectively and not pull away from other things that need to
Don't we
happen.
already teach civics?
We do,
Okay.
but it's not mandated across the state.
Oh,
So yeah, it's the disconnect between what you're getting in one area versus another. Um,
cursive. Does anybody
Cursive.
really write in cursive?
No, but I asked
Who
this
cares?
question because I was like, why are we still teaching cursive? So
Right.
I asked my son's principal in elementary school, and she came back with a really great response that it helps connect pathways in the brain to learn cursive.
What?
And you can do it in other ways, but the research has shown that that's the easiest and fastest way to do it, to
Really?
help those connections fire off. And
Okay,
because
now
my
I'm
son
totally for it.
struggled with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so we can do this in other ways, but he was struggling with cursive, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until fourth grade that it clicked for him, as they started learning it in St.
Interesting.
Croix in third grade. And his teacher in fourth grade was like really on board with, okay, if he's struggling with getting through a homework assignment, just print it, it'll be fine. And we kind of powered through, and it just clicked and he got it. But we are like, okay, so those were those connections that needed to happen,
Sure.
and you got it. And once we were on board with it from a brain development standpoint, then we could help him. And as long as he knows the why behind something, we can usually get his buy-in on it.
I wish more adults thought the way that your son did. I want to know the why, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, we
All right.
have to give him the why.
Yeah, I love it. So you have healthcare, mental health, childcare, and education. What else?
Oh, there's also reproductive rights. Like we've got to make sure that women have the ability to make the decisions that are right for them and their health care, and not have the government butting into things.
When you say
I'm a
reproductive
big,
rights, is that are we talking about
Mhm.
abortion, or is there more under that umbrella?
All of it. Abortion, access to birth control, making sure that people have the resources they need when they need them.
Sure.
Um, I know that there was a proposal for making sure that IVF would be covered under um, health insurance plans, because Wisconsin does not require that health insurance plans cover anything related to IVF.
What's IVF
And
again?
artificial, well, no, I'm trying to figure
I've
out
seen it,
words
but I've
to
never read anything about
do.
it.
IVF is fertility treatments where they have to um, fertilize outside and then implant.
Okay.
So I'm trying to like my
That's okay.
cold ridden
I don't need
brain is trying to
descriptions or
find
visuals.
words that
No,
are
that's
like
okay.
easy on that. It's harvesting eggs and doing it in a petri dish and then implanting. So it's an involved, very expensive process that a lot of families need to be able to um, get pregnant and have
Got
the
it.
children that they want.
Got it.
And because I kind of think of these things holistically, um, we have a lot of women who have things go wrong in their pregnancies. And unfortunately, abortion is the treatment
Mhm.
for that.
Mhm.
And when you get to later term issues, it's usually someone's worst day of their life getting horrific news from a doctor. And women should be able to decide if they're carrying that pregnancy to term, if that's right for them, or if they're going to end it there and protect their mental health. Because it's traumatic when something happens like that. It's just not somewhere that the government has any part of being in that process.
And I think Governor Evers has even said, obviously this has now become a state issue after Dobbs
Mm-hmm.
and everything. Now he may have updated, but this was quite a while ago. I believe he had said at the time that unless the legislature comes with a 100%, basically what you're saying, we shouldn't be governing this at all. Everything needs to be on the table, and this is a woman's choice between. Unless that comes to me, I'm going to veto everything. Now maybe that has changed, but if I recall, that's kind of where he was with this. So how do you approach something like this? Because this is a big topic, but this is also similar to a lot of the things that you, I'm sure, thought about when you're going to be in the assembly.
Mm-hmm.
The compromise part. Boy, there's some things you just don't compromise on. So if there's a
There's
situation where it's okay, it's got to be 100% government stay out of the bedroom, reproductive rights or bust. Like I'm not going to sign onto a bill that is any compromise at all. How do you do that in good conscience? Like, but that goes against what I believe, but it still might be better than what we currently have. Have you thought about
mm-hmm.
how do I make that decision?
That's one of those things that you don't know how you're going to go with it
until
until you're in that situation.
sure.
Because it's all about that give and take. It can't be all one side or all the other for our legislation, but I'm pretty firm that there's some places the government does not belong. My roots, my background, all led me to believe that small government is the way to go. Small, smart government. You want to keep government out of personal matters because if it's not affecting you personally, it's none of your business. Um, and I really think that there's a lot of ways we can work together on a lot of issues, but if we can get that buy-in across the board that this is gross for people to be sitting in a legislature and discussing, oh, it's okay in this case, but not in this case, and what about severe birth defects and how much is okay for the parents to have to cope with and fight through. Um, this one breaks my heart, but it's what happens when you have a baby that's born with severe birth defects. And the two saddest words in the human language combination is baby hospice. And there's a lot of parents who get to the point where we're seeing it in some of the southern states with really draconian restrictions. Um, their infant mortality rates are going up because these are babies that would not have been carried to
Sure.
term otherwise. And at what point are we saying, no, you got to do that because somebody else believes that that's what's right? Those are the decisions that I just don't think the government has a place in them. It's heartbreaking tragedies for these families. And the realities of our healthcare system are that if you have that baby and then are required to provide care that's just going to prolong their suffering, then the parents are still having to pay the bills for all of that. So, from a fiscal standpoint,
Right.
from a human standpoint, it's a really terrible thing to force somebody into.
When you have conversations, when you knock on people's doors, and maybe they're on the other side of the fence on that topic, um, is it is it a welcome conversation? Like, let's talk about this. And we can agree to
Yeah.
disagree, and it's not necessarily I'm trying to change your mind, but maybe you haven't thought about it from a different perspective. Are these
Hmm.
conversations that you're having, or is that one that never have that conversation? That's like rule one. It's a college 101 running a campaign. Don't ever actually talk about that.
I've had a lot of really great conversations about around reproductive rights and decision making as I've, knocked on doors. And there was one lady, she's totally against abortion, would never have had one. She was past that point in her life anyway. Um, but she had preyed on, like, I'd actually run into her at the farmer's market. So we'd had a brief conversation, and then I knocked her door, not realizing it was her. And then she was telling me about it, and she was like, I went home and I prayed about it. And it just hit me that these, God gave us free will to do these things on our own. And that was the standpoint that she was coming from. She's like, you've totally got my vote, and I've decided I'm going to vote um, Democratic up and down to help protect women's rights. And then I had a conversation with somebody else whose family has expanded through adoption, and they are against abortion, but had known someone who was raped as a 13-year-old. And they were like, they had ended that pregnancy that had resulted and made sure that she didn't have to go through that trauma. But we were able to have a really great conversation about exceptions and how, again, when is it the government's role to decide these things versus trusting women to make these decisions on their own? Because I don't know about you and your family, but I know that I can make my own decisions. And my husband supports my decisions, or he'll weigh in if he thinks, oh, well, did you think about that? But these things that are up for family discussions,
Mm.
not legislation, not government intruding on these things.
Well, in full disclosure, I have a small little husband brain, so that's why I let my wife do my thinking for me. Because I'm stupid, but I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, you're a very smart man.
right. We're almost up against our time here. Let me ask you, if is the only thing that people need to know about you when they turn out to vote is I'm a Democrat, right? It's because a lot of people are just they're going to vote Democrat, Republican. Is it you're a Democrat? I know everything about you now. Is there anything
No.
that people may be surprised by that? Well, interestingly, or is it because Republicans, some of them are all on the same page, like the Patriot Group people? You pretty
Hmm.
much know what you're going to get. More of the
Yeah.
establishment Republicans, you pretty much know what you're going to get. Is this all right? If you vote Democrat, vote me, because I'm just like all the other Democrats, and if you like them, you'll like me.
I wasn't always a Democrat.
What now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Really?
this is
What
the
did that
first time in
change?
my life I've picked a party.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, I've always been pretty independent minded, but I'm also practical. And if you're going to run for office, you gotta pick a side. And I felt, again, I was raised in East Tennessee. My family was Republican, and I had kind of grown up through that thinking, okay, small business or small government, fiscal responsibility,
Individual rights over group rights.
individual
You bet.
rights over group
Yep.
rights, but making sure that we're all taken care of. And as I aged and got access to more information as the internet became a thing,
Thank you, Al Gore.
I realized, yeah, I realized that what they were saying from the Republican Party and the end effect of their policies was not lining up. And then they started in on the culture war stuff, and I don't care what someone else does in their private life. That's that's between them and whatever God they worship. So I moved away from the Republican Party. It's been probably 20 years since I've voted Republican in a presidential race. Um, but I've just had this evolution of we can do better and mind the budget at the same time. We don't have a money problem in Wisconsin, we have a priority problem. It's where that money gets invested that matters.
That's a good
And we have
soundbite,
to
by
make
the way.
sure that,
That's a really
yeah,
good
it is, isn't
soundbite.
it?
Yeah, that's great. You should put that on your website. Like, no kidding. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So we can do better making sure that the middle class is taken care of, that as far as having the resources that we need to build the lives that we want for ourselves. And making sure that we've got the childcare available, that we've got healthcare available in our rural areas, that we can access mental health care when we need it before it becomes a crisis situation.
Mm.
And these are achievable goals if we just kind of take a step back and really assess how we're going about running our state. And I think if we can just remember that we're all people and start talking about these things, we can figure out some creative ways to go forward.
So if I'm hearing that right, and we've had a lot of Democrat guests on over the years, I think if I heard it right, this may be an all-time first on our show that a Democrat is on a candidate or is already elected. You were talking about priority problem, not so like money problem. That is saying we don't need to use more money. We just need to reallocate and refocus where our current money
Hmm.
is. Because that's not typically a Democrat thing. Usually and they have wonderful platform. We should do this and this and this and this. And then, of course, there's always the question, but how are we paying
Hmm.
for it?
It's
So,
where you get the revenue from that matters, because we can get the revenue. It's just who's paying more
was this the,
when it
we need to
comes
tax
down.
the rich more?
You know,
Is it?
if you're benefiting from the system and it's not trickling down through your paychecks to your employees, then yeah. But we shouldn't be burdening our middle class with more property taxes to fund our schools.
Yeah, I
Like
think we can all
there's
agree on that one.
the equation is off a bit. I found there's usually a pendulum swing, and we've gone too far with shoving costs onto our rural communities and making it to where it's harder for seniors to stay in their homes with increased property taxes, and just making sure that we've got the care infrastructure that we need, you
Well,
know?
where can people go and find out more about you?
Vote Jane for WI.com is my website. I think you've got that linked
Yep,
somewhere.
yep, yep.
And I'm also on Facebook with my campaign. So you'll see info hit there periodically.
And the election's coming up, about 6 weeks away?
November 5th.
November.
It's
Oh my
getting
goodness,
close
it
now.
is
We're in the
getting.
home stretch.
Yeah. If you could tell everyone, every single voter in your district, just one thing or one paragraph, or just I want to make sure that boy, that'd be great if everyone just knew this about me. Because you had even said it's uphill battle. It seems as though that district is, obviously it's been realigned, but like in Northwest Wisconsin, after they realigned it, ironically, a lot of those, it was, kind of the gerrymandering thing to kind of get rid of that. But interestingly, in rural Northwest Wisconsin, a lot of these are more Republican, heavier districts. So you
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of a battle. You've already talked about that. But boy, if everyone just knew this about me, I think I got a shot at this. What
Well,
would that be?
I am astonishingly normal. I'm
Right?
worried about making sure that our district has the resources it needs, and a little creative problem solving goes a long way to making sure that we can reach our priorities. Um, and honestly, I really appreciate so much about our culture and just the beauty that's in our area. From hunting, I love a good venison roast. It's a beautiful thing. Um, to Everything about being outdoors around here is it's such a wonderful place to live, and I'm very excited to be able to represent us and do a little good in our communities.
It's such a worthy venture. Anyone that is putting themselves out there and runs for anything, I applaud you. Thank you, Jane, for doing that. Best of luck to you on November 5th. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, special thank you to our guest today, Democratic candidate in Wisconsin's 75th Assembly District race, Jane Kleiss, for taking the time to come on for a chat with us. I'll see all of you right back here on Tuesday for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy with Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald. And I think it's our 9-year anniversary at DrydenWire and our 204th episode on Tuesday. So you want to tune in for that. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching. And as always, have a blessed day.